Hello, everyone. This is Mandak coming at you with another podcast. This is an audio podcast broadcasting from my apartment. Another Sunday night, so I figured I'd do a podcast this week. The title for this podcast is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy Avengers Volume 1 podcast. I plan to do podcasts on all these collections, so this is the first installment of that podcast. Like I said before, with other audio podcasts, this is strictly just going to be audio, so you won't have to be seeing my face at all. I know some people are disappointed by that, maybe, but I don't know. So I'll also have a title card, so just feel free to put this on and listen to it if you have some time to kill, / if you're interested in getting into this book. I'll go over all the details and stuff like that. We'll go through all the issues as well, issue by issue. I have a lot of notes here, so I'll be following that, and kind of diverting a little bit from it. Guardians of the Galaxy obviously has been a popular franchise for Marvel in the very recent past, but going back to the 1970s and 80s, it really wasn't as big as it is today, obviously, with the two movies out right now. Over the course of these past few years, I've been kind of hunting down these collections that Marvel has had of all the classic Guardian stuff. As we go along here, this stuff is the very beginnings of the Guardians of the Galaxy as they are as a team. And then we'll get into Jim Valentino's run, Guardians in the year 3000 collections, and then, transitioning into the most recent runs, including Abnett and Lanning's run, as well as the first parts of the Bendis run. So I guess just to go over real quick, Guardians of the Galaxy Tomorrow's Avengers collections, there's 2 volumes of them, and they kind of just collect a bunch of random stuff. This isn't the era where Guardians actually has a ongoing series. It's just a bunch of stuff that they were featured in. But as we go along today, we'll talk about the stories, and the stories are pretty interconnected. They're pretty fluid throughout. There's not, you're not jumping around, and they're not all like one-off stories or whatever. There is a plot and a, storyline to follow. It's just not collected in a ongoing series. Same thing with the second collection. The second collection collects a bunch of other stuff, as well as the whole Korvac saga, which includes the Avengers. You can get that in a separate trade as well, but. And then we get into Jim Valentino's run, which has 3 volumes, also collected in omnibus. And then you have the year 3000 volumes, which is also 3 volumes. We'll touch on those as we go along. I just wanted to explain kind of my format for what I'm doing. So this volume, we'll go through real quick. Has 368 pages. Comes in a paperback version. It collects Marvel Superheroes Volume 1, number 18, Marvel 2-in-1, Volume 1, number 4 through 5, Giant Size Defenders Volume 1, number 5, Defenders Volume 1, numbers 26 through 29, as well as Marvel Presents Volume 1, numbers 3 through 12. So a lot of different things, and you can just tell here, the Guardians really got their start in the Defenders book being featured there, and then they got kind of their mini own story to do in Marvel Presents. So I'll go through it today. Obviously, like I said before, this is my first podcast with this series, so this is early to mid-70s, so the text can be pretty thick in parts. That being said, though, I think I read this in probably about maybe 5-6 days. Usually with 368 pages, that usually takes me about a week to go through just because of work and all that other stuff. But this actually was a pretty quick read. I really enjoyed it. The first part obviously is a little bit harder to read because it is earlier 70s stuff. So the writers are Arnold Drake, Steve Gerber, and Roger Stern. Arnold Drake, I think, did the first Marvel Superheroes Volume 1, number 18, which is the origins of the characters, which I'll explain here. Steve Gerber was doing the Defenders books, and I believe he also did. I think he did the Marvel 2-in-1 as well as the beginning of Marvel Presents, which had just the Guardian stuff, after the Defenders storyline. and then Roger Stern comes in and finishes up the Marvel Presents. And honestly, there really isn't a discrepancy in terms of the continuity of these characters. All three of these writers really try to stick to the origins of the characters. The characterization is pretty on point throughout, so it's not very jumpy in terms of characterization. And in terms of artists, you have some really good artists on this book. You have Gene Colan, who I think drew the Marvel Superheroes Volume 1, number 18. Very reminiscent of Gene Colan's art. Very. I read a lot of Iron Man stuff, and the panels are crazy. They're not all square. There's some of them are triangular, diamond shape, whatever. So it's a really very dynamic art style at that point. Sal Buscema, done a myriad of things for Marvel at that time. Don Heck is another familiar face. I've known him from Iron Man and all that stuff. And then Al Milgrom, I think, does a lot of the Marvel Presents stuff towards the end of this collection. So a lot of good talent on this book, and that's something that a lot of people kind of overlook with this. They could look at this as like, oh, this is the early stuff, it's probably not good. Well, there's some pretty notable writers, creators, artists, that kind of stuff on this collection. So just go over real quick too the way that you can collect this collection, I guess. It's in trade paperback form, which is what I own. It has all 368 pages. Collects all that stuff that I just mentioned up above. Actually, after I finished the book, I flipped to the back cover, and they showed ads for other things. And there actually are 2 Marvel Premiere Classics for this that collect the same material. One of them is called Earth Shall Overcome, and the other one is The Power of Starhawk. Earth Shall Overcome collects, Marvel Superheroes number 18, the 2-in-1 books, and all the Defender stuff, and then The Power of Starhawk collects all the Marvel Presents stuff. So I'm assuming these are probably like pretty thick hardcovers. So if you want to go hardcover route, you can do that. If you want to wait, you can actually get. There's actually an omnibus that was just announced called Guardians of the Galaxy Tomorrow's Heroes Omnibus, not Tomorrow's Avengers. Tomorrow's Heroes Omnibus. And that collects all of this stuff, as well as I think all the material that's collected in the second volume of Tomorrow's Avengers Guardians of the Galaxy stuff. So, if you want the omnibus, you want the oversized format, I would suggest getting that. For some of this art, it probably would look nice on oversized pages. So it's totally up to you. There's some options there for you guys, and that actually would fit really nicely next to the Jim Valentino Guardians Omnibus, which actually came out I think about a year or so ago. So you could get kind of two classic Guardians Omnibus right next to each other. So that's all the introductory stuff. Just going over all the details. I'll get into this real quick. All the different issues, but I just want to sit back and I guess look at this whole story as in general. Before we get into it, I really enjoyed this. Going into this whole read-a-thon, I really thought that these first few volumes of material would be hard to get through. Especially with the fact that it's 70s stuff and it would be really text heavy, and I don't know if it would be the storylines might not be hold up as well as today. It might be cheesy, but overall, I really, really enjoyed this collection a lot more than I thought I would, and that's mostly due to the characterization. The characters in this book, they're not all of them are pretty much brand new. So, for people who are jumping into this story, and want to learn some new characters, this is a great opportunity to do so. In the beginning, you kind of have the Defenders there to kind of bounce off the Guardians. So there's some familiar faces there, including Doctor Strange, all that stuff. But overall, this team is all brand new with characters, and it's just a great group. And I think the chemistry there is just awesome. So without further ado, I'll get into all these issues. So I don't have tea this time, but I have water. So gotta stay hydrated. So I'll take a sip real quick, and then we'll get started. Okay, so like I said before, the first issue is Marvel Superheroes Volume 1, number 18, and this book, I guess, was just a anthology book, just bouncing around different things. I don't think there was one storyline threading through the whole Marvel Superheroes book. But in issue number 18, we were introduced to the original team of Guardians, and it opens up with Charlie 27, who is a Jovian, a astronaut, a militiaman from Jupiter, and Arnold Drake does a good job explaining all the different things that why Charlie 27 looks the way he does. He has a really big face, really big dude overall, and the reason why is because he has the mass, 11 times the mass of a regular human, and he also has can withstand 3 times the amount of gravity as a human could. And that's just because he's conditioned to live on Jupiter. And as we go along with this first issue, we kind of find out a little bit more about why the characters are the way they are. And it kind of does a little bit. Drake doesn't really do a lot of laying the foundation of this whole story. I don't think they were intending it to go as far as it would, but kind of just explaining that this is 3000. This is in the year 3000. So, at this point, Earth has spread out across the solar system. They've bred and conditioned different humans to be able to live in these areas, and Charlie 27 is one of those guys who can live in Jupiter's atmosphere. But at this point, Jupiter has been destroyed by the Badoon. All the planets in the solar system have been taken over by this race called the Badoon, which are a bunch of crazy lizard-like creatures. So we open to Charlie 27 kind of escaping out of Jupiter to kind of just he's the last of his race. So we see him go into a teleport, which is a system that allows him to teleport to different planets, and he teleports to Pluto, where he meets another human, evolved human, Plutonian, or whatever. I don't know if it's Plutonian. I don't know what the name of the type of race on Pluto would be, but we see Charlie being hunted down in Pluto, and he runs into this other guy who's hiding. His name's Martinex. Martinex, I think that's how you pronounce it. But he's the crystal dude, pretty much. That's how I basically recognize him. And Charlie 27 and Martinex actually made an appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. They were part of Starhawk, Stakar's group that was on that was the leader of the Ravagers. And I'll get to that more as we go along. But so basically, we have Charlie 27 and Martinex escaping Pluto, escaping the Badoon, and they both go to Earth, where they run into Vance Astro and Yondu, who are the other two guys in this Guardians of the Galaxy team. Now, Vance Astro has a pretty cool backstory. He was an astronaut who, in the 1980s, was sent to, I don't know if he was sent to Mars or Mercury. He was sent to another planet, and when he gets there, his trip is a 1,000-year trip, so he's encased in this metal suit of armor that basically prevents his body from withering. For being in space, it kind of preserves his body. So once he gets to this planet, he finds out that the space travel, by the time he gets there 1,000 years later, which is the current time that they're all living in now, he finds out that space travel was fixed so that they could travel a lot faster. So naturally, that would really piss off Vance, because he's like, well, what? I literally just did all this for nothing, pretty much. So that's a little tragic, I guess, backstory with him. His family, all his people he knows are pretty much dead at this point, and he cannot take off this metal suit. If he takes off this metal suit, he'll wither and die in seconds because of being away. So, but his powers include, I probably should went over all their powers. Vance's powers include using he has a psychokinetic burst he can shoot out of his head. I don't know if they explain how he got that. I think that he when he landed on this planet, they kind of gave him that power. Martinex has the ability to kind of use heat, either make stuff really hot or really cold. And then Charlie 27 is he's kind of like a Colossus Hulk kind of character. He can basically just crash through stuff, and he's really useful for that. And the last member we run into is Yondu, who we all know from the movie. He's the only character in this group that was in the first Guardians movie. And Yondu is the sole survivor of a Earth colony called Centauri 4. And he, just like in the movies, his power, he actually shoots an arrow made of Yaka metal, I think it is, and he whistles and he can manipulate the way it goes. I think in this issue he actually stabs a Badoon, or in a later issue he does, but throughout the whole story though, he very rarely kills people with his arrow. It's kind of just used as a diversion or a tool to kind of stop something from falling. It's really cool how they use it, but pretty much the end of this issue kind of has all of them escaping the Badoon that took over the Earth. So that's kind of a recurring theme throughout this whole book, is the Badoon having this stranglehold over Earth in the year 3000. And the first part of this book with the Marvel 2-in-1 issues, the Defenders issues, the Giant Size Defenders issues, that's all kind of revolving around this idea of the Badoon taking over Earth. So so Marvel Superheroes number 18 introduces the characters, and then we move on to Marvel 2-in-1 numbers 4 through 5. And just to quick summarize this, you have the Cap and the Thing in present day, 1970s, whenever this was published, along with Sharon Carter, as well as this new character called Taryn, who is a chick that actually traveled back from the future to stop the Badoon. She kind of escapes from the future and tells the Guardians about what the Badoon are doing in the year 3000. So, the Thing, being part of the Fantastic Four, obviously goes to Reed Richards and Medusa at the time, because they have Doom's time machine. I'm not sure what Fantastic Four issue this was at this time. I think it was probably like in like the late, like probably close to issue 100 maybe. Maybe even further past that, I guess. But they actually used Doom's time machine to send the Cap, Thing, Sharon Carter, and Taryn all back to the future, where they try to help liberate, the Badoon and all that stuff. And I don't really think they get much done. I think they actually just end up fending off, and they run into these creatures that are called Zoms, and the Zoms are basically the humans that were converted into slaves by the Badoon. So, this whole thing is very, the Badoon basically have a stranglehold over Earth, and this whole story kind of revolves around the four of them kind of liberating this one city from the Badoon. And as we go along here, as we get into the Defenders issues, the Defenders kind of take it that next step and seek to do more than just liberate one city from the Badoon. They seek to save the whole world from the Badoon. So, Giant Size Defenders number 5 has a character called Elar, which is basically like a reptile, electric eel kind of thing, attacking the Defenders. And the Defenders team at this point is Nighthawk, Doctor Strange, the Incredible Hulk, and Valkyrie. And at this point, Elar is attacking on modern day. And sorry, let me just take a drink real quick. Talking a lot here. But yeah, so they fight off this guy, and I think the Guardians actually come back through time to the past, where they notice this Elar guy, and they're noticing what he's saying. He's saying all this weird stuff, like kind of like the Badoon, and they realize that this Elar guy is actually a mutated eel from the ocean, from a helmet that was lodged in the ocean. That's pretty much how the Guardians get tracked into this. Is they're tracking this helmet through time. It's weird. And as they go back in time, they try to stop the Badoon from taking over in the first place. So that's kind of where they meet the Guardians, or not the Guardians. The Guardians meet the Defenders. So yeah, and during this fight, Martin X, who's just go over real quick. Martin X is kind of like the science whiz, the tech on the team. He kind of knows like all the different stuff. He usually pilots the ship. So while the Guardians and the Defenders are fighting Elar and figuring out like what's going on with the Badoon, Martin X notices a 13-year-old kid wander on the ship, which their ship is actually named Captain America. It's actually named after Captain America, and this 13-year-old kid comes onto the ship, and this kid's name is actually Vance Astro. So you can see here, that's kind of what this was, like one of the first issues that kind of just got me hooked, because like that was like the last page of the book. Because during the story, they kind of revealed this kid like who was obsessed with Captain America, like was a big superhero fan, and he stumbles onto this ship and he talks to this guy. He's like, "Oh, what's your name, kid?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm Vance Astro," and we all know Vance Astro is, you know, one of the members of the Guardians of the Galaxy team that's right down there too, fighting in 1970s, whatever it is. So that's kind of what got me hooked to this story. Like, oh shit, like we have some time travel stuff, and that's pretty much how Giant Size Defenders #5 ends. And then we have the 4 issues of Defenders, which is kind of a 4-part story of the Defenders helping out the Guardians from saving the Earth. So Defenders 26 opens with Valkyrie telling this guy named Jack Norris that he needs to stop hitting on her because she has the same body as his wife Barbara. And Jack Norris is a minor character that kind of plays into this whole storyline going forward, but isn't really a main character. At this time also the Guardians and the Defenders are trying to figure out what's causing all these natural disasters. There's like tsunamis, earthquakes, tornadoes going on around the world. And, Doctor Strange, I think, puts it together and says, Vance is existing in both his adult and child form at the same time, and that's what's causing this rift in, all these different things. Because I think during the initial open with Valkyrie and Jack, there's like a earthquake that hits, and like they're like, what the hell? We're like out here in New York. Like there's no way there could be an earthquake out here. So Vance actually, I don't know how this makes it better, but Vance actually goes and talks to his younger self about the history leading up to the Badoon takeover in 3015. Kind of tells him all that stuff, and then Doctor Strange's like, okay, dude, you can't do that. So he wipes the kid's mind. So, nothing really happens there. So they realize that they have to go back to the future and save themselves from the Badoon. So I really don't understand. I mean, the Guardians kind of got tied back because they were trying to go back in time to save it, and then Doctor Strange's like, yeah, we need to go back to your time and figure out what's going on. So issue 27 of the Defenders kind of picks up where that left off. We had the Defenders and Guardians of the Galaxy, arriving in 3015, and they split up. We have about 8 characters here, 9 characters, main characters in this book. Between the Defenders and Guardians teams. So you have Doctor Strange on the ship. He's shooting all these guys down for reconnaissance. I think it's Yondu, Hulk, Valkyrie, and Vance Astro. And as he's shooting them, like he's right outside of Earth, he's trying to shoot them down to Earth to do some reconnaissance, kind of like spy mission to figure out what's going on with the Badoon. And during this time, when he's doing this transport, the Badoon pick up this like teleportation, and they actually shoot a beam that deflects the guys that are being teleported off the different planets. So you kind of get all these different stories going on. And it's really cool how they all kind of tie back into the main event. You have Valkyrie pretty much from the Defenders, Vance from the Guardians being shot to a planet where there's like blood everywhere, and Val's trying to fight these like demons, and she gets hurt, and but she actually gets saved by this mysterious guy, which we don't find out later is Starhawk, which we'll get to as we go along here. Hulk and Yondu end up on a planet where everyone is like drunk, and it's kind of like a battle royale place. There's no principles really much. People are just fighting and stuff like that. There's a whole death match that we get to later on, but they're captured by these robots because the Hulk, I guess, destroy these little robots, and like this big robot shows up and it's like, you kill my kids, and like it's weird. So and then back on the ship you have Doctor Strange, Martin X, Charlie 27, and you have Nighthawk. I don't think I talked about Nighthawk yet, but Nighthawk is probably one of my least favorite characters in this whole book. I mean, he really doesn't do a lot, and his powers are really kind of dumb sometimes. But so they're sitting on the ship, and they're kind of figuring out. They're trying to find, where the hell did our other 4 dudes go? Like they got shut off, God knows where. So while they're figuring this out, Strange is kind of reach out to find out where they are, trying to use his what's that name? I forget what it is. Astral form. That's what it is. So he's trying to figure out that, and at the same time, they find out that they're being boarded by the Badoon. So that's kind of where issue 27 ends. Issue 28 we pick up with Captain America getting boarded. The Captain America, I'm sorry, the ship called Captain America getting boarded, and Martin X, Charlie 27, Nighthawk, they're captured while the Badoon try to find the energy source that's being emitted from this ship. That's kind of what prompted them to board the ship, and they find a dead Doctor Strange. And at this time, Martin X, Charlie 27, and Nighthawk, they all think that Doctor Strange is dead. None of them know that he can exist in his astral form. So he, so the three of them get taken away by the Badoon, and Strange in the meantime is looking for the two teams that got shot off. So we then cut to Valkyrie and Vance meeting Starhawk and actually being introduced to the Sisterhood of the Badoon. I forgot to mention that. The Brotherhood of the Badoon is the group that's actually taking over the Earth, and they're all dudes. But Starhawk, after healing Val on this planet, this one planet that they got shot off to, Starhawk's like, I want to introduce you to the Sisterhood of the Badoon, and we get a very lengthy backstory of who they are, and it's really weird because the Sisterhood of the Badoon basically do not associate with the Brotherhood except when the Brotherhood comes back to mate with them, and then they pretty much have kids or whatever, and then they basically come back to have sex with the Sisterhood to repopulate, and then they leave. And the Sisterhood kind of just lets them do this and kind of doesn't associate with the Brotherhood at all. And it's not until Vance, says something that, tells the Sisterhood, look, do you know what the Brotherhood's actually doing? Because the Sisterhood, I guess, thought that the Brotherhood was being was just coexisting with the rest of humanity, all that stuff, and Vance has to tell them look, the Brotherhood is literally taking over the whole solar system. You need to get off your ass and help us out here, because the Sisterhood is a lot more advanced, a lot more technology advanced. The Badoon, the Brotherhood are very cruel, very ancient in terms of the way they go about things. So we cut to that, and then we have back on the planet where Yondu and the Hulk are at. We have Yondu kind of facing off in a gladiator match, where he actually ends up winning, with his arrow and all that stuff. And it's really weird. They're like, oh, it's a death match, and everyone's sitting there watching on the TV and kind of enjoying it. It's kind of like Planet Hulk, or kind of like if you saw Thor Ragnarok, the movie. It's kind of like that one scene where the Hulk and the Thor are fighting. It's kind of like just a show, but people were actually dying, so that's kind of screwed up. And then we cut back to this Starhawk, kind of chilling on the planet with Val and Vance, and he takes off from the sister planet. And at the same time, while he's leaving the planet, Doctor Strange actually sees him leaving, and because that's where he finds Val and Vance finally, and they transport him back to Earth, where Val and Vance actually get transported back right exactly where Nighthawk, Martin X, and Charlie 27 are about to be executed by the Badoon. And that's kind of where the next issue leads off. We have issue 29. Val and Vance free the three captured heroes and proceed to fight the Badoon, thinking Strange is dead and the Hulk and Yondu are gone forever. Because at this point, Doctor Strange still hasn't found the Hulk and Yondu, so a lot of them are kind of mourning their loss. But little did he know that back on this planet, Yondu survived his death match, so naturally the Hulk has to fight his. And the Hulk actually gets bundled with this other chick who I think she was one of these the king of this planet. He had all these chicks that he was hanging out with, and this one chick actually had a thing with Hulk. She actually liked him or something, and because she liked him, the king was I will banish you as well to this death match. And they get transported to this snowy climate where they have to fight these bug things, and naturally the Hulk wins because he's the Hulk. But just as he's about to freaking destroy the king of this planet, Yondu and the Hulk are transported by Doctor Strange. So he finds them as well. And Strange and Jack Norris, that character that I mentioned before, they show up to help liberate all the cities under Badoon rule. And then Starhawk shows up out of nowhere. Starhawk's kind of just jumping around doing whatever the hell he wants. But he's kind of like, the biggest thing with Starhawk is that, we get more explanation of his character later, but at this point he's a very mysterious character. We don't really get a lot of backstory of him. We get a few shots. I think last issue there was a moment where he actually comes back after he leaves the Sisterhood planet. He comes back and to this a dome area and chills with these 3 kids and talking to this one girl on a video screen. And we don't really get a lot of context as readers about what's going on there. Not until very much further down in the storyline of this book. But Starhawk shows up and talks to Strange after the Defenders and Guardians have kind of fought off all the Badoon in this area. And Starhawk tells him, he's like, look, Strange, you and your Defenders guys need to kind of return back to your own time. At this point, I'm kind of the one who knows everything. So at this point in the timeline, the Guardians will help to continue to liberate the Earth. And Doctor Strange, knowing, kind of being able to also glimpse into the future and kind of see the different possibilities, he agrees with Starhawk, and they're transported back to Earth. Much to the Defenders' disdain, a lot of them, including Nighthawk, felt that they were abandoning the Guardians in the future to kind of fight their battle. But Doctor Strange had to explain to them, look, that's their battle to fight now. We've done all we can. We have to be in our own time as well. So, the end of that's the last Defenders issue of this collection. And, reading some interviews that happened in the back of the book, with the first issue of this volume, you had Marvel Comics Presents number 18. That was kind of the introduction, and then this whole Defenders storyline was pretty much the way that Guardians could get featured into the Marvel stuff. They did, this was kind of the test run to see if this was something that people cared about. So the rest of this book is all Marvel Presents stuff. We get Marvel Presents numbers 3 through 12. So, a 9-issue storyline, a 10-issue storyline. Sorry about that. But this has a bunch of different things, and this is where I think the book really starts to pick up in terms of giving the characters a lot of time to kind of grow and, mature. There's a few storylines here. Some of them are kind of tied into each other, but so let me take a quick drink and then we'll get into this next part, which is pretty much the second half of this book. Okay. So Marvel Presents number 3. Like I said before, in the last Defenders issue, Defenders number 29, you had the Defenders assisting the Guardians in kind of starting the revolution to free Earth from the rule of the Brotherhood of the Badoon. So in the beginning of issue number 3, you have the Guardians opening up to liberating New Moscow, and Martinex actually kills their leader with fire, because that's one of his powers. The leader's name is Cord. And I guess killing him is acceptable since he's a lizard person. He's not technically a human, so just trying to think comics code at this point. But so after the leader's been killed, the Badoon are captured. Starhawk brings the female Badoon down to take over the Earth. Since the Sisterhood would be able to kind of create a transition and kind of be able to take over, and kind of ease a transition from the Badoon to the humans, because I think Starhawk kind of explained it if the Badoon, if humans just rid the world of the Badoon, it could just create a same cycle where the humans would just destroy themselves because they wouldn't know how to lead. So the Sisterhood kind of had to be that group that would come in and transition the power slowly over to the humans. But the humans are actually, it kind of backfires on the humans. They kind of just go crazy and start fighting all this shit, and the Sisterhood was like, well, I guess if they're so crazy that they can't contain themselves, we're just gonna leave. And this is where we kind of get some commentary from Starhawk about how cruel humans can be and how they can create problems worse than the Badoon. So this book really tries to address some really existential scientific themes of rule and all that stuff, and it works in some levels, just not as much as I think they were hoping for. So at this point, the Earth is kind of in a semi-stable state. You have, the Badoon's reign is over. The humans are fairly stable. It's just, there's no, it's still kind of in flux a little bit. But then, at this time, the Guardians are kind of just living, living on Earth, because they pretty much, have done what they set out to do from the very first issue of this collection. So Yondu is like chilling in this one place, and he's almost killed by this human that I guess didn't like him, but he uses his arrow, so it's all good. Charlie 27 tries to blend in and kind of get a construction job, but the humans kind of make fun of him too, and prejudice him as well. Martin X is, like I said, he's a scientific tech wizard, that type of thing. So he's doing research in, I think, somewhere in Europe, I think Austria, and the guy that he's working with is not really comfortable working with a Pluvian. That's what it is. I'm sorry, it's not a Plutonian, it's a Pluvian. Sorry about that. And then Vance, this was the weirdest. As we go along here, I'll be the first one to say Vance Astro is a very, very weird character. He's very, he is not the quintessential heroic type. His morals are very all over the place in this storyline. I don't know if that was intentional or what, but he's a very, very tragic and like flawed man, and we'll get into that more as we go along here. But while all these other guys are trying to just blend in and kind of be contributors to society, Vance is over here trying to, be with this hooker, pretty much. I'm not sugarcoating it or saying it any different way, but he tries to like bang this hooker, and he actually, he realizes that he can't do that because if he wanted to, he would have to take off his suit and he would die. So, just as he's feeling bad about that, all four of these characters get teleported back to the Captain America, which I guess Starhawk owns for some reason, and he's like, Starhawk's there, and he's like, we have a mission for you guys to follow out on, and that's kind of where that issue starts, or ends, I guess. So issue 4 here, we open to Yondu and the Guardians chilling on this one planet, where Yondu's kind of reaching out. And that's one thing, I guess, to talk about with Yondu is this Yondu, I mean, as many people probably would have guessed, is not anywhere close to the characterization we see in the movies. Yondu in this one, Yondu is clearly based off of a Native American, Indian, that type of character. So he's very spiritual. He's very very reserved. Very he values tradition and honor a lot. So you kind of see that throughout this whole book here. But he senses some sort of life force being drawn to him. And then we go back to the ship where Vance and Starhawk are kind of just having a little squabble, and Vance is kind of just kind of taking in everything, not just with what happened with the Badoon, but kind of just his current state where he's at now, how he's trapped in this suit and how he can't really do much. And he actually has a room in the Captain America where he actually reconstructed his old room that he had when he was a 13-year-old. And we saw that room back in the Defenders issue when we saw the kid version of Vance Astro. But he's chilling there, and him and Starhawk are kind of having squabbles when they realize, when they actually notice a ship, a Mercurian ship floating around, and they actually have it board their ship, and that's where we kind of get introduced to the newest character of the Guardians, which is Nikki. Now, Nikki is a girl from Mercury who, just like the rest of them, saw the Badoon come and ravage her family, kill her planet. She barely got out of there with her life, and she was cruising around for about 7 years, just trying to stay alive. And I think she found some sort of other ship and was able to get food there and all that stuff. But yeah, she's basically been chilling for 7 years out in space, hoping to find somebody or something to start over again with, and that's where she kind of ends up with the Guardians. So it's a really tragic story for her, but I think it's just more motivation for why she would become a Guardian. And that's kind of the common thing among all these characters, is that they've all lost a lot. Martinex is the last of his race. Same thing with Charlie. Same thing with Nikki. Vance is, a guy out of time, kind of like Captain America in some ways. But yeah, so she joins the team, and as we go along here, her relationship with Charlie 27 and Vance is definitely evolves as we go along. So, she's on the team, and at the same time, we notice this like white blob. It's literally like a white blob with an eyes and a mouth, and it's called the Carinata, as Yondu states. It's out in space, like eating all life. Excuse me. Oh my god, I almost think I'm gonna sneeze. Okay. But yeah, so this giant thing called the Carinata is actually like eating all life. And while they're figuring this out, Starhawk actually steps aside and switches into this chick for some reason. And at the same time, Vance walks in and he's like, "Whoa, what do we have here? Like, who's this?" And the chick actually tells Vance to tell Starhawk that the children are safe. And Vance is like, "Okay, what children? What are you even talking about?" And then just as the other Guardians are coming into the room, Starhawk changes back into his male form, obviously. So again, it's just another. This is the first time I think we see Starhawk change into this woman, and as we go along, obviously I'll explain more about who this woman is. So we have this Carinata character out there, a Carinata like space thing eating up all the stuff. So Starhawk goes out there to explore what it is when it actually attacks the ship and Starhawk, and then we end with the issue. Starhawk is gone. There was like some sort of like recorder device on him, and all we see is the recorder device coming back, and there's no Starhawk on it. So yeah, we end up with the issue with Starhawk allegedly dying. So issue number 5, we have the Guardians. The Guardian ship is damaged from this attack by the Carinata, so they land on this planet called Asylum, which oddly looks like New York back in like the 1980s. So you have Vance kind of reminiscing in that time, missing the days where he was on Earth with, his family and his, all the people that he lived with. So Martinex stays on board to kind of help with the repairs, and the rest of the Guardians are shipped down to Earth, to this planet called Asylum, to kind of look for a missing part that Martinex needs to repair the ship. So, but before they can get to that, they're actually attacked by this mobster who tries like capturing them and all that stuff. And this is kind of one of the first times where we get to see the whole team working together. And a lot of these action sequences are really sweet. The Guardians just beat the shit out of this guy, and they take the mobster, the leader guy, hostage to kind of get down and escape out through the back of the building. But yeah, so Marty needs this transistor. That's actually what they call him. They call him Marty for short instead of Martinex. But Vance and Yondu go to this one store to get the transistor, and Vance not having any cash for some reason, I guess he actually takes one of Yondu's arrows out and gives the guy his arrow and says, I'll give you this for the transistor, and they do that. But just as this guy's about to shoot the arrow, after the store owner gets the arrow, he kind of just like shoots it for like arrow practice. And when he shoots it, Yondu actually whistles and takes the arrow away from him, and then that's kind of where the chase starts. And they have, so basically Vance and Yondu are being chased down now. Charlie and Nikki are chilling, just like walking around the city on this planet called Asylum. And we kind of get some good development between the two of them. It's kind of like a brother and sister relationship. It's not so much a romantic relationship, but yeah. So all 4 characters are pretty much split up. Vance and Yondu split up, so they're not captured together. So Vance kind of runs into this group about self-expression, and Vance is just like, yeah, screw that. I'm not about that at all. Yondu finds out that there really isn't any real government on this planet. There's this character called the Talker, who I guess is kind of like their leader, but not really. Charlie 27 gets arrested for fighting, but he's actually not, like, he's trying to save this one character. And then Nikki meets this guy who apparently says he's like a guide, and she doesn't really buy it. Nikki's kind of like a sassy character. So they pretty much all have like their little side quests. None of them really matter except for the end, where they're kind of getting chased by the people who Vance and Yondu stole from. And just as they're being chased, they're actually taken by these caretakers who say like, oh, this is the world we've created. We're just here to observe them, and they actually just give them the item that they want, and they leave in peace. So it kind of just bails them out. It's kind of like a random issue. It's not really tied in a lot with the main story, but nonetheless, it sets up some pretty good times for the characters to develop. So Marvel presents number 16. We kind of open up to the Guardians of the Galaxy again, kind of now getting their ship fixed. They're witnessing the Carinata again feasting on another planet, and Nikki, seeing her planet get ravaged, she wants to fight the Carinata instead of just sitting there and watching it destroy this planet. And she sends the ship piloting towards the monster, where they actually go through the mouth of the monster and crash on this like desert planet. And Vance is pissed. He's like, "What the hell did you just do? Like now we're stuck here on this freaking whatever this is." So Vance kind of stays behind and figures out what's going on, and the other four go out to explore this planet. And they run into this tribe trying to find out like what's going on here, all this stuff. And they actually run into Starhawk, who was chilling here, and he's like, I have to show you this one place real quick. At the same time while this is happening, Vance is chilling on the ship, just still pissed about what happened with them being marooned now on this desert planet. When he notices like a little version of the Carinata, like kind of like chewing on his metal protection, and we get a scene where Vance kind of looks over and sees his human body, like him in his astronaut outfit, and he's kind of like figuring out what this is, and the astronaut kind of breathes in, or the astronaut form of him kind of like emits this gas that he breathes in, and it kind of just transitions over. It's really weird. I'm gonna be honest with you. This was a little hard to follow in some ways, but the other members of the Guardians back on the desert planet find a place known as the Coven of Living Fire, and Starhawk kind of explains to them that this is the only way they're going to get off this planet and destroy the Carinata. So issue 7 has opens up to again the Coven of Fire, where Starhawk explains to the Guardians that Nikki has to be sacrificed in order to save the people trapped on this desert planet, which actually we find out last issue is actually this giant galaxy spanning dude that's like literally like imprisoned by the Carinata or something like that. They call him the Topographical Man. Kind of makes sense, I guess. But yeah, so Vance kind of during this, while Nikki's going through this ritual, Vance faces off against his human form, passes out. He wakes up and finds out that he has to disperse into energy to go occupy the Topographical Man. It's really, this whole story is kind of a little out there in some ways. But yeah, so he kind of zooms off in an energy form to go fight, or to go take over the Topographical Man's body. And during the ritual of Nikki being transformed into this like thing to kind of help the people that are trapped on this Topographical Man, Starhawk changes back into the female version, which we find out is actually his wife, Aletta. And we find out that the children are dead because of his neglect of the message a few issues ago. Remember when I said that Starhawk changed into the woman to kind of explain to Starhawk that the children are in danger. We cut back to Nikki being turned into like this fiery ghost that actually like flies away and gets into grows to the size of the Topographical Man and kind of saves him by destroying him or something like that. And at the end, you have the rest of the Guardians escaping, the planet. Starhawk at this point is in the female form, Aletta, which is his wife. And Vance and Nikki return back to the ship, after they've destroyed the Topographical Man. and for some reason they're actually holding hands. And it's funny because as we go along here, there is a little bit of relationship between Nikki and Vance that kind of doesn't really come to fruition yet, but it's still something to keep your eye on. So Marvel presents number eight, the Guardians of the Galaxy. So that issues 3 through 7 kind of have that storyline, and it kind of goes over. In terms of the strength of that storyline, it wasn't really my favorite. It's a little tough to follow sometimes, but it was all right. So Marvel presents number 8. You have the Guardians opening up to recovering a recorder, a memory device from the Badoon, and we get this story that plays on this recorder after they recover it. That kind of goes over the Silver Surfer's encounter with the Badoon back, way back in like the 1980s, about 1,000 years ago, before what they were doing. And the Silver Surfer shows up to Earth, notices this giant Badoon ship, and is like, "What are you guys doing here?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we're here to help the humans, kind of help them out, see what's going on." And this one human comes out, and she's like, "No, they're trying to kill us all." And then the Badoon kind of kill her, and then Silver Surfer can kind of put 2 and 2 together and be like, "Yeah, you're here to destroy them." So a fight ensues. The Badoons shoot a missile at him, and during this time, the Badoon's ship and like all these monsters that they throw at the Silver Surfer, they're all invisible to the people on Earth. So, while the Silver Surfer is fighting this monster that the Badoon unleashed against him, the humans see all these explosions and stuff like that, and all they can see is the Silver Surfer. So naturally, they're thinking that the Silver Surfer is the one that's destroying Earth and all the stuff, which is confusing to them because they're like, the Silver Surfer helped us out against Galactus all those years ago, obviously referencing the coming of Galactus storyline from the Fantastic Four. But yeah, so kind of just shows, in the end, the Silver Surfer destroys the monster, and actually, the army shows up to try to blow up the Silver Surfer, but they actually end up blowing up the invisible Badoon ship, which kind of just shows to them that, oh, there was another party in play here. And that this is before the Badoon takeover. So what happens is the Badoon ship kind of gets blown up, and the rest of the fleet kind of escapes because the Silver Surfer basically handed them their ass. So it's kind of cool though, explaining how because there's a lot of hints towards the Badoon takeover in the year 3000 in this issue, kind of being like the Badoon well, we'll be back to take over Earth again. We might not have one today, but we'll be back another day. And at the end of this issue, we have Vance actually destroying the recorder because he's so pissed about how people don't give the Silver Surfer credit, and how they were so quick to discount him after they saved him, after he basically saved the world single-handedly from Galactus numerous times. So that's pretty cool. Obviously this just again showcases Vance's very particular attitude. He gets pissed off about a lot of things, and he's a very, like I said, very flawed guy. Has a really short temperament. Yeah, so that's pretty much the end of that issue. Let me take another drink, and then we'll get into the tail end of this volume. Man, 53 minutes so far. I don't know how many people are still watching this, but I appreciate you if you are. Okay, so we have issues 9, 10, 11, and 12 left here. So I'll try to wrap this up real quick. So like I said, issue 9, you have Vance being pissed off about the Badoon recorder, and this is where we get some good character development with him and Nikki. Nikki comes in and says, calm down, it's not a big deal, whatever. And she actually ends up kissing him, which is kind of out of left field. I wasn't expecting it. And I think she mentioned something. She mentioned something else in this issue. She's like, "Hey, if you ever need someone, or if you ever want to go out and do something, let me know." And it's weird because I'm a little confused about how old Nikki is in these issues. They talk about how she's like a kid when she comes on board at first, and then at this point she's kind of talking to Vance and chilling with him and kind of hitting on him. So I don't know how old she is. But after this whole story, they find out that the Reavers of Arcturus, I think that's how you say it, show up and surround the ship. And it's during this time where Starhawk, Starhawk actually transitions back again into Aletta, but this time Starhawk and Aletta actually are two different parts, or two different bodies, and they actually separate and pass out together. So the Guardians take them to the the infirmary, whatever, on the ship, and pretty much the rest of this issue and into Marvel Presents number 10, we get the origin story of Starhawk. So just to go over real quick who Starhawk is. After all this time, he's been in these issues for how many issues now? We haven't really known a lot about him until this issue. He was born on this planet called Vesper. He was actually kidnapped and deposited on the planet Arcturus 4. That's kind of where the Reavers of Arcturus come from. They're part of this planet called Arcturus 4. And the baby was discovered by a Arcturian couple who were among the last of the planet's mutants. And I guess the Arcturian people don't really like mutants because they were slain by the Reavers of Arcturus, the people who surrounded the ship of the Guardians in this issue. And you have one Reaver called Ogord, who is kind of like the ruler of this group, and he notices the kid, and he takes the kid in and kind of raises him, with his wife, Salan. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. It's Salaan. So I guess Salan, whatever. And they name the boy Stakar. So you can kind of see here where, Stakar is the name of the character from Guardians of the Galaxy. Sylvester Stallone is Starhawk, pretty much. I really don't see them doing this origin story because, as I'll explain later on here, this is where his origin gets a little weird. But that's where Sylvester Stallone's character comes from. He is Starhawk. So Stakar was kidnapped and put on Arcturus 4. He was raised by this couple and who were mutants. He was killed, whatever. And then, as he was adopted by Ogord, he kind of gathered an interest in science and technology, archaeology, that type of stuff. And he was looking at these ruins of a hawk god. Yeah, I know, it's very on the nose. There's no subtlety in his origin at all. I forgot to mention too, his sister is Aletta. So I'll explain that a little bit here too. So he's looking at this like hawk god statue, looking at like this like helmet or whatever, and at the same time, Ogord's trying to find out where Aletta and Stakar are, because like Stakar was like out there just chilling out and doing random shit, and Aletta's telling him like, dude, we have to go, like, our dad could kill us if he found us here looking at this statue of this hawk god. And Aletta takes the helmet and kind of throws it down, and she gets like kind of sucked into the statue of this god, this hawk god, and there's a big fight with the Reavers, and all that stuff, and pretty much at the end, Stakar gets onto a ship and kind of flies around Aletta, who at this time is stuck in this hawk god like statue that came to life, and he's telling her like, be one with my mind, like calm down, I need you, we can get through this together, you need to control this power. And it's at that time where a giant explosion pretty much blows up like this whole area and turns this whole thing into glass, and at the end of this, all you see is one being standing among this whole area, and it is Starhawk. And he explains how Starhawk is both Aletta and Stakar kind of combined together, and they both occupy the same space, and when they switch out, they're kind of put into limbo. It's kind of reminiscent of Captain Marvel with what's his name? Rick Jones, I think that's what it is. Is that what it is? Yeah, I think it is. But yeah, so it's kind of like the same thing. Like they switch out bodies and then they, are in limbo. But yeah, so now this is the weird part, because, like I said before, Aletta is his sister, but they're not related by blood. They're, Stakar is the adopted son of Ogord, and Ogord's daughter is Aletta. So they end up, I guess, falling in love or whatever, and they actually have 3 kids together, whose names are Sita, Tara, and then John. It's really weird. Like, some of them, like, I don't know where Sita comes from. Tara sounds like a normal name, I guess, for a girl. And then there's John. So those are the 3 kids that were mentioned in the past issues, being abandoned. But little do they know, that these kids are not dead. They're actually being, the Reavers who show up in this issue to surround the planet are actually, part of O'Gord's group, and they actually have the 3 kids hostage. Because what happened was when Sakaar got this power, when Sakaar and Aletta got this power of the Hawk God, O'Gord wanted them to stay with the Reavers and kind of, help use that power to take over the world and spread their influence. And Sakaar was like, no, I'm not. That's not what this purpose is for. My purpose is to go to the stars and save the universe and galaxy from evil and all that stuff. And O'Gord didn't like that, so he wanted the 2 kids to kind of stay and take over and help grow the Reavers' influence across the galaxy. So pretty much this fight that happens between issues 9 and 10 is the fight between because O'Gord kind of takes the kids and makes them like vampires to attack Starhawk, because he's like, if you're not gonna help me, if you're not gonna use your power to help the Reavers, then I'm gonna use your kids against you to kill you. And that kind of puts Starhawk in a crazy area, because he's like, well, what do I do? Do I go after? Do I kill my kids, or do I, stop my father? Whatever. And at the same time as this is happening, because Starhawk is pretty much flying around doing whatever at this point, he actually flies down to Arcturus 4 and tries to stop his father from using his kids against him. At the same time, the Captain America ship, is being boarded by this guy named Brutag and some more Reavers. The Guardians beat the shit out of them, and they actually steal a Ravager, or not Ravager ship, a Reaver ship, and fly down to. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I getting ahead of myself? Yeah. Oh no, I'm not getting ahead of myself. Yeah. So basically, the ship is kind of beat the shit out of them, and they actually end up latching onto a Reaver ship and actually end up boarding that ship and taking it down to Arcturus 4, where Starhawk is. And that's kind of where they all meet up. Starhawk is being, killed by his kids who are being transformed into vampires, and at the same time they're also being aged. So like the kids are like probably like 6 or 7 years old, and because of this vampire ability that they're shooting at their dad, they're becoming like 20-year-olds. So pretty much at the end of this whole thing, the Guardians end up, freeing. Freeing the kids from these bands that are turning them into vampires or are killing their dads. But at the same time, when they take off those bands, the kids actually age so fast that they actually end up turning to dust. And, O'Gord mourns that he's lost his grandchildren, and Starhawk lost his kids. But after this whole thing, Starhawk is really seriously injured, and the Guardians kind of take him and escape Arcturus 4, which transitions into the next issue, Marvel Presents number 12, where the Guardians escape Arcturus 4. They're flying through space when they find the station called the Dry Dock Station, and the only person who kind of recognizes this station, it's kind of like the International Space Station of Earth, I guess. And the only person who notices this is Charlie 27, because his race actually worked on this station. But he thought it was abandoned. So they actually show up, and all these guys are chilling here. Turns out they were all robots that were luring, the Guardians into a battle. So, Yondu, Martinex, Starhawk, they're being transported to the sick bay, but they're actually like taken hostage and like put in like these cryogenic chambers. Charlie finds this like Jovian commander, but actually reveals himself to be a hologram that captures the Guardians, like I said. And they actually plan to clone Nikki and Vance for like some army or whatever. But the rest of this issue is pretty much a one-man show with Charlie 27 just showcasing his talents, And the thing is, Charlie 27 is a character, like I said before, who is, kind of like the muscle of this group. But he's also has a lot of, ingenuity and can figure stuff out, as we see in this issue. So he fights off the robots. At one point, he kind of he realizes he has to go outside of the station and walk on the outside to kind of get to the center and destroy this hologram robot thing. We also get some development with his backstory with his father. At the end, when he gets to the hologram actually changes. The hologram has records on all of the Jovians who were in that dock, including Charlie 27's father. And in a desperate attempt to kind of, I guess, preserve himself, the hologram robot thing tries to form a hologram of Charlie's family, including his dad, and says Charlie, we can be a family again. And Charlie has to kind of say no to that joy that he could get from being with his family to destroy this hologram and save his friends, the Guardians. So that's a really touching story, and that's actually where this collection ends. So I know I talked a lot. We're going on 1 hour and 5 minutes at this point. But just to sit back and comment about all this collection as a whole, the Defender stuff is great, but the Marvel Presents stuff is where it really gets good. It really delves more into the characters. Overall, Charlie 27 is just that great, optimistic dude. Martin X is that scientific guy that, Vance, like I said before, Vance, what's very interesting about him is just how crazy he gets sometimes and how he just has a short temperament. The slow reveal of Starhawk's, who he is, I think that's pretty interesting, other than the fact that he, married and had kids with his sister, who is not actually his genetic sister, but it's still really weird. I don't know what Marvel was really thinking there, but so overall, this is a really good start to this whole read-a-thon. Like I said before, none of these characters are the Guardians from the movies we've seen, so besides Yondu, obviously. But overall, like I said, I really enjoyed it. If you're looking to get into Guardian stuff and you're like, I really want to start back right where it began, I would recommend this collection wholeheartedly. It's not nearly as bad as what I thought it was going to be. It's really actually very interesting. The characters are just really good. And just a reference real quick, there was actually a video I watched on YouTube who talked about this same volume, and some people were talking about how the book suffers from all new characters. Martin X, Charlie 27, Vance Astro, and Nikki, and who am I missing? Starhawk. They're all new characters, but the thing is, Yondu. All of them were new characters back then. But I think that's probably one of the biggest strengths of this book is that you can, you're not having to look back to other continuities of the character to kind of build your group. You kind of can, the creators at this time were able to just really go with whatever they wanted to build these characters. So, overall, I think it's really great. I'm trying to think of other things. Let me take a drink and I'll try to close this podcast out. But yeah, so the next volume, like I said, is tomorrow's Avengers volume 2, which I'm currently reading right now. And that also has a hodgepodge of stuff. Like I said, the Korvac saga heavily includes the Guardians, so I'll be reading that over the next few weeks. Hopefully the next week. I don't think it should take me that long to read it, but that is where we're going with this podcast. So we'll see how these characters develop along the line, but this is a very good, solid beginning to these characters' histories. You have the classic tragic heroes like Vance, Astro, and really all these characters are very tragic. They've all lost pretty much everybody that they live with. So obviously there's a lot of room there to develop backstories. So I'm excited to see where we go with these characters as we go along here. But this has been the Guardians of the Galaxy Tomorrow's Avengers Volume 1 podcast. Stay tuned for more podcasts as we go along here. Hopefully I don't see this taking more than a few months to do, but we'll see. So Thank you guys for listening, and have a great day.